No worries. Well, cheers.
Cheers, yeah.
Ty, are you not drinking? Are you gonna hold out?
I am. I don't have any beer at my house right now.
You don't have any beer at your house?
No beer.
Why didn't you tell me? I would have dropped some off.
Well, that would have been kind
Seriously, you've got no beer in quarantine. Now I'm worried about you.
Yeah, I know. Somebody send help. What are you drinking, Brett?
I'm drinking the Mexican lager.
Nice.
Which is great.
You actually did get the Cranky Sam beers. I like it.
I won the Crowler, so it's hard to turn down, you know.
Oh, there you
nice.
go.
Okay, excellent.
I would have gone anyways. Our office is a block away, 2 blocks away, and so.
Where do you work?
I work for the Paddleheads, the baseball team.
Oh,
we have an office downtown that's shared space with the visitor center.
Awesome.
Cool. What do you do for them?
I'm the operations manager.
Sweet.
It's got to be a fun gig.
Yeah.
It is in summer, and then things will slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
But, yeah. It definitely is. It's what I wanted to do, so it's good.
That's awesome. So, Brett, you should totally win this beer flight picture contest then. Do you actually have all of them?
I will definitely try.
Post a photo, $50 to Pangea. It's a pretty good deal.
You guys do have the good deals. I might have to let someone else win it, though.
Oh, that's nice of you.
I know, very generous.
Getting notified that they're going to cut off our chat soon, so.
I'll miss you guys.
I know. It was thanks for talking.
Of course.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. Where do you guys work?
I work at Fisher's Technology.
Okay, yeah.
And I just started a new job at Cenox. Not to be confused with Cenex, the gas station.
Right. Well, congratulations on that.
Thanks, appreciate that.
That's exciting.
Wow.
We'll have to go out and celebrate after the whole quarantine thing.
Yeah, give me one more week and then I will be ready to get out and celebrate. And ready to
Sure.
I don't have any.
Well, yeah, someone's got to get you a beer. Jeez.
There you go. Yeah, I started a new job and had to go straight to working from home on my very first day. So
That's exciting.
That's
What a time to start a new job.
yeah, I was kind of looking forward to like going back and actually working from the office, get back into that work mode a little bit. And then very first day, got that text message of like, hey buddy, I just tested positive for COVID. Yeah, all right.
Like, awesome.
I guess I better get out of here. All right, getting a few more folks in here. I like it.
Nice. Welcome, everybody.
Oh, I was on mute. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Jackie. How are you?
All Welcome.
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Did you pick up the beer flight?
No, I did not.
That's okay. I forgot to as well. But if
Oh,
you have beer, cheers.
Well, cheers. I have some wine with me today.
Oh, perfect. That works as well.
Thanks everybody for joining. We're going to start soon, so just hang tight. We're going to let a few more people get in, and then we'll be ready to go.
I just keep looking at this guy like at a baseball stadium.
Good to go. All right, how's it going, everybody? My name is Ian Crow with Missoula Young Professionals, and we're going to start out the night here with a beer tasting flight, and then we're going to move on to our keynote speaker, David Bell from Alps Insurance. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We're really excited to do our second event. I'm glad you guys joined. So first things first, remember to post a picture and tag us in it for a Pangea $50 gift card, or to be put in the drawing for that. And then everyone that's registered is going to be entered for a coffee and conversation with David Bell, our keynote speaker. So next, Timmy Ivonne. He's the head brewmaster here at Cranky Sam Public House. You guys need to come down here and try their beer. It's fantastic. So what we're going to do tonight is going to go through 4 beers here, and I'm going to get to taste them with him. And he's going to kind of give a little backstory on Cranky Sam and kind of how they've been doing and everything like that. So here you go, Timmy.
Right on. Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. Like you said, I'm Timmy Ivonne with Cranky Sam Public House and Cranky Sam Brewing right next door. I'm the head brewer here / kind of utility person. It's been an interesting journey for us, I suppose. I can just talk about how we started this business and what it's been like. We started in mid-May, which was after COVID had started, and about a week after they told us we could open, we opened. So we kind of opened to not much fanfare, and unfortunately, just not the hype that we were hoping for. We had kept all press at bay, so we could have a wave of press before we opened, and kind of turns out COVID put a damper on that one. So, we're slowly starting to grow here and establish a base of customers. This is a town of fierce loyalty, local loyalty. And, folks have their watering holes. So it's a tall order for us at this point to get people in, but we seem to be doing great, all things considered. So pretty happy about that. Let's see, this is the brainchild of Jed and Jennifer Hagen, local business owners here, have been Missoulians for a long time. The two of them kind of came up with this idea after Jed had been a home brewer for several years and was working just on creating his own animal. So some of these beers that you're gonna taste, I'm sure some folks have some of this stuff at home, maybe. Have we been asked these questions if anybody has anything at home?
Yeah. Well, they were supposed to come pick them up.
Cool. Yeah. Well, for those of you who do have it at home, congratulations. For those of you who don't, use your imagination a little bit. But yeah, Jed and Jennifer Hagen started this place basically looking to have a little higher quality beer, maybe a little bit upper echelon experience. So great service is what we always wanted to do. Very high quality products across the board. We ended up making the decision to get a beer and wine license, which allowing us to sell wine, cider, seltzer. The idea is really that there's something for everybody here. Yeah. Yeah? Is this better?
There we go.
All right. Sorry, apologies. So this space used to be Reynolds Radiator Shop for the locals here. If you remember that place, it was, I think it was here since the 40s, I want to say, something like that. It was just an oily, broken concrete, dilapidated roof mess that, we put a lot of energy into fixing up. And, as you can see, for the people who are here, and hopefully those of you who come visit, there's a whole lot of the history of this place that we tried to preserve in this project. All this wood paneling, it's all from the original ceiling next door. So, at great time and effort, we reclaimed all of that wood. And so every piece of trim in this whole place, including the bar, the canopy over the bar, it's all original wood from the ceiling here, which is, pretty old. Honestly, nobody really knows exactly how old, but in this room, we call this the stone room. There's a stone wall that's original. We believe, from the 1880s, no way to know, but the deed sold in 1876, and we know this place is on a map at some point in 88. So somewhere in between that's when this stone wall was constructed. It's still here. We also found this amazing mural buried under the drywall of a nude woman in red. It's absolutely gorgeous. So we decided for sure that we wanted to preserve that and had an artist come in and restore the whole thing and catalog the process. So it's a fun place. We found a ton of artifacts. That's another very, very interesting thing. A ton of artifacts that shed light on the early Chinese community here, the early prostitution community, because this was the red light district right here where we are. So there's a lot of that history, and a lot of the archaeologists at the U are extremely excited about the find here. Some of them have switched gears entirely and are now doing their dissertation and thesis on just this find, this archaeological dig. So it's quite amazing. We have a few of the finds behind the bar, but we're waiting on the bulk of them. Yeah. So anyway, that's a little history. We can dive into the beers. I'm thirsty. So yeah, a little about tasting. So we're gonna taste 4 beers. So what we should do is let's start with the Mexican lager. Usually want to start with the least offensive, most neutral beer possible, and then work your way up in flavor and alcohol, bitterness. That's where you want to go because you want to ruin your palate right off the bat. Right. So Mexican lager. This is the first thing. Cheers.
Cheers.
So yeah, crystal clear beer. like a good lager. It's filtered really tight. A lot of flavor for a lager. My background is as a brewer, is brewing lagers at the Bohemian Brewery in South Salt Lake, Midvale. For those of you familiar with that area, Bohemian's great, still making great lagers, all European style. But yeah, I love making lagers. I also studied in Germany, and to me, beer should be clean and drinkable, very flavorful, but you don't have to compromise repeatability when you make a very flavorful beer, right? So that's the intention on a Mexican lager. It has to be like very neutral, but at the same time, I've built a lot of flavor into this beer using a very long process and kind of old school techniques that are nerdy and some would argue unnecessary, but I really like it. So that's why I made it this way.
I like it too.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's great. So, Mexican lager, it's a category that's kind of complex and almost generic. There's so many different types of Mexican lagers out there. We're kind of just making these things up as American craft brewers. So there's some folks that put lime and salt in a Mexican lager. There's Mexican lagers that are more dark colored lagers, like, a Vienna style, or this is our Märzen, Oktoberfest. Some of the Mexican lagers are like that. I went for the straight up, Modelo, Corona side of the coin with more flavor. And this one turned out really, really nice. It's actually, I think it's our best seller by a pretty substantial margin. Aside from Oktoberfest, which is just a seasonal beer. But, we won't try that. You're going to have to come in to try that. So we can move on to the next one. Am I going too fast? How's my pacing?
No, I think you're doing great.
It's pretty good?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. All right. So next one. This is a hazy IPA. Call it Sea Love. Charles Love. Charles Love was a character in early Missoula, 1870s, 1880s, who was an African-American veteran, prize fighter, hairdresser, chin reaper. They used to call folks that, do the old-timey shave. He was just like a Renaissance man. Really interesting story. This is a colorful beer. Typically marketing for these beers is very colorful and neon, bright, because they're complex and bright and fruity. So I figured naming it after Charles Love was the perfect honor for this guy. Yeah. So yeah, hazy IPA. So it should have a low level of bitterness. Lots of bright fruit character, some grassiness I'm getting. I get interesting tropical fruit notes, citrus notes, things like passion fruit, maybe a little like guava in there. But then like an underlying level of like kind of fresh grassiness.
Like orange?
Yeah, some orange for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, orange and tangerine.
Yeah.
Like, it's a kind of beer that there's a lot of complexity, so every time you drink it, you might get a little something different if you're nerdy enough to care about that stuff, like I am. A lot of times people just want to drink a beer, tastes good.
Yeah.
You know what?
No, it's really good.
That's cool too.
Really good.
Yeah. I'm digging this one. And this is actually the end of this batch, so something to note about hoppy beer is those bright characteristics that are indicative of IPAs, other types of hoppy beers. They are the ones that fall off, unfortunately, the fastest. They oxidize the most readily. So, a hoppy beer that is 3 months old is going to taste markedly different than what it was, at its inception. So this one is, honestly, it's like 2 months. It's still kind of holding up, still nice.
Yeah,
still
no,
got
it's
some
good.
Bright fruit character. Yeah, how about you? Too bitter?
No, it's
bad.
great.
That one's actually
Yeah, it's
really
actually
good.
really good.
So yeah, for those of you who are listening who aren't IPA fans, most likely because the bitterness is a little bit too much typically. These styles, these hazies, they're about subduing bitterness and increasing bright hop character, fruity, juicy hop character. So they're kind of a great compromise. A little too short.
It's a tall table.
Yeah. Is it the table?
Yeah.
Next one, we have the Hidden Lady IPA, named after our awesome mural that we found behind the drywall. It's the best demo find of my life, by the way.
No, it's
Really, it's all downhill from here. It doesn't matter what house I buy. I start writing stuff down. I'm never gonna find something like that. That was it.
Yeah.
So we named this beer. This is actually an original recipe of the primary owner, Jed Hagen, part of his homebrew project. I think originally he called it Miller Creek IPA, but we didn't really want to put the word Miller in a beer brand. I don't know. Yeah.
They license it.
We don't need a poker bear. But also we wanted to honor this lady. You know, absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous picture. So gorgeous beer. So this one, again, try to subdue bitterness on this. It should be smooth, fruit, kind of fruit forward, piney, a little bit of spruce in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's like a nice underlying citrus character in there, a kind of malt richness. You know, technically you'd consider this sort of a Northwest style, Pacific Northwest style IPA. I believe this is 50 IBU as well for the real nerdy beer people out there.
So what is IBU? What is that?
IBU is a measurement of bitterness. It's international bittering units. If you want to get really nerdy, it is a measurement of the isomerized alpha acids in solution that impart bitterness to us. The reality is that it's a pretty insufficient measurement for bitterness because there's other things that are bitter aside from just these alpha acids. Hence a beer like this, where I really don't isomerize any alpha acids at all, but there's still some bitterness to it. IBU is insufficient to talk about it. So the beer industry right now is actually having this conversation. This is kind of like fun, just fun little beer trivia, keep you current.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out a better system for measuring bitterness. But currently, IBU is what we got.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice.
No, this one, very good. Very good.
So again, one of our best sellers. We can just move on to the Wee Heavy. This is another one from Jed, homebrew repertoire. So anybody know what a Wee Heavy is? A Wee Heavy is a strong Scottish ale. Typically it's very malt forward, very low to almost no bitterness, right? The balance should be much more malty, slightly sweet. Some of these examples are very, very sweet and robust. Some of them are just kind of malty, subdued sweetness. This one is on the darker side, much darker side of the coin, but that's kind of normal here. There's, cold smoke is here. They call that a Scotch ale too. That's pretty dark.
Yeah.
But just a nuance of roast character in a really smooth way. Caramel, dark fruit, a lot of complexity to this beer. And, it's about an 8% beer. I think 7.8%.
Nice.
And it's sneaky. So, careful. Depending on how much fun you want to have.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that will sneak up on you pretty fast because it's very easy to drink and it hides its alcohol. Which, is something that I really enjoy doing. Again, I like making beers that are very drinkable, very easy to get down and repeatable. When you finish taking a sip, you want to put it in your mouth again. That's the idea. There's a German word called Süffig. Süffigkeit. Yeah,
we have it.
I'll leave it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, we say like drinkable or quaffable or something, but it really doesn't encapsulate what Süffig encapsulates, right? Like, it's just that amazing quality of an alcoholic beverage. Like how it drinks, how it finishes, how it makes you just want to continuously put this thing in your mouth. It's fantastic. So I want to make Süffig beer. That's what these beers are. And really, this one's a good example because Scotch ales they can be pretty intense. especially an 8% beer gets pretty intense. This one, it finishes unexpectedly dry, which makes it pretty repeatable, but it tastes like it's sweet. So there's not so much actual residual sugar left over, which helps you repeat this over and over and over again. Oh yeah.
Very specific.
And this is
Very good.
This one's got a lot of dark fruit. You know, to me, this is, and it, in no way, shape, or form does it taste like 8%. It drinks like a 5% beer. It's really approaching the robust porter category. It's right where, you know, I mean, if you look at beer styles, these are just things that we've all made up. Things have evolved, different styles have evolved all over the world. Based on water, you know, what kind of ingredients were available, you know, a host of other reasons. There's a lot of overlap with styles. And so this beer, to me, is right where the two styles of a strong Scotch ale, a wee heavy, and a robust porter, right where they overlap. That's what this is. So I'm getting a lot of dark fruit in addition to that really smooth roast. I get like plum and grape in there.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Anything else? Are you getting anything out of this?
I want to say raisin, but I don't want
Yeah.
that kind of goes along with
raisin.
the grape.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big
Yeah.
time raisin.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's very nice beer. Very nice beer.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things that we're working on right now is packaging. I should probably talk about how we're dealing with COVID because, you know, it's been a roller coaster like everybody else. For sure, we've had days of great business and we've had absolutely dead times, especially when the weather hit very cruelly and unexpectedly 2 weeks ago. Just killed it. But one of the things that we're doing is we're going to start packaging. So we have cans on order. We're going to start canning, selling 4 packs of cans out of here, selling to several spots around town. We're going to do to-go keg sales out of here, so you can come up and get a keg for a party. And we're getting on tap at different spots around town as well. Right now, I think we're at 3 spots: James Bar, Chamambo, and where else? I know there's one more. It's just escaping me. At Rumor, yeah, also Rumor. So yeah, hopefully we get all over this place, and that'll allow me to make a lot more beer. To keep getting creative about it. Kind of sky's the limit here. We want to fool around with a lot of things and keep like a really consistent, excellent list of flagship beers on as well. So, but we'll be doing sour beer. We'll be doing barrel-aged beers. We have a coffee collaboration coming up with a new coffee company. We're doing a white stout. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that style, but it's kind of a gimmicky, fun thing where you brew a stout, which is typically black, but you don't put any roast in there, so it mimics other characteristics of it, like fullness, richness on the palate, but it's blonde. So that with cold steep coffee, that's like very berry forward. That's going to be that collab. Should be awesome.
Sounds exciting.
So, yeah, many things.
Yeah. Well, we do have a few questions. So we'll start out. Where did you study in Germany?
So I studied with a school called the Siebel Institute, which is based out of Chicago, Illinois, which is where I'm from, actually. And they have a sister program with a school called Germans Academy, just outside of Munich. So yeah, in Gräfelfing. Gräfelfing. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Next is favorite beer to brew, and then the next question is most challenging beer to brew.
Yeah,
or are they both the same?
It might be the same. Yeah, really any lager is, it's a longer fermentation. You're using the lager yeast strain versus an ale yeast strain, so fermentation takes a long time, and there's considerations during that process. It's also just takes a little bit more care for the yeast to really produce a super clean and flavorful beer. And since I'm a little bit unnecessarily nerdy, I like to do, long step mashes. So, my mash, people are familiar with the brew process, but one of the first things that you do, you mill the grain and you mix it with water. They call that the mash. And that can last for, anywhere from 15 minutes for some big production breweries to, hours, depending on what we're going to do. I do a pretty labor-intensive step mash. We also don't have a mixer, so I have a huge vat that I mix this in by hand with a paddle. For every step, I hit different temperatures along the way. This Mexican lager, I think it's like a 2-hour, 15-minute step mash. Many brewers might make fun of me for doing this, just full disclosure, because modern malting techniques have modified a lot of the enzymatic activity has happened already. So folks could argue that this is an unnecessary step. I think there's nuance of flavor that can be built into these beers, particularly with something like this Mexican lager that's blonde, that's very neutral, that doesn't have a lot that's going to hide nuance. So you want to build character into that. Yeah. Let's see.
Awesome.
There is another fun one that I do where I continuously run off and go back into the kettle while I heat it to perform a step mash, and it caramelizes the whole time. That creates quite an interesting character. Done that on a couple of beers. So, yeah, that's fun.
Awesome. Any other questions from the small crew we have here? All right. Well, thank you very much. We can kind of move these out of the way. Well,
Thanks so much.
We can finish these. Oh,
Where can we find this beer? Right here in town.
yeah. Good question.
Soon we will have cans. I think it'll be, I'm guessing like January. At some point we might be in liquor stores and grocery stores. We're definitely going to be in Orange Street Market right away. We've already spoken to them about it. They're great. So yeah, right now, just the 3 spots I mentioned and us have this beer. So please come down, hang out.
Yeah.
It's a really nice space, and the beer is solid. If I don't say so myself.
Yeah. Well, I can attest to that. The beer was very good, and NYP and Cranky Sam's, they've been really nice to us. We've been using their outside patio space to do our meetings, to set up for these events, and they've just been awesome. The beers are really good. I think my favorite was probably this one, the Hidden Lady.
The IPA.
Yeah, which is surprising because I'm not an IPA guy, but I really like that one. That was good. And you guys do need to come down and check out the actual mural that he's been talking about. It's very cool. I thought that was a painting you guys had done. I didn't know it was here before.
Oh gosh, yeah. We're not 100% sure when it was painted, but sometime between the 20s and the 40s.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was thinking it was when this spot was a speakeasy.
Yeah, that's so cool. Very good beer. You guys need to come down for sure. I think Taylor, our social media gal, is going to post a picture on our Instagram and our Facebook, maybe. I don't know. Facebook will allow that. Maybe. And so you guys can see it, but then come down and check it out yourself.
I could send you one with blurriness.
Yeah.
We got it for the kids.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Timmy. Yeah. You brew some great beer.
I appreciate you.
Yeah. All right, guys. So our next speaker is David Bell from Alps Insurance. He's the president and CEO. He's going to come on and give us a talk about kind of his background, what he's had to deal with during COVID, his company, kind of what they do, anything he wants to talk about himself. He's been in Missoula a long time. And like I said before, anybody that's on the call, we're going to put you into a drawing to have a coffee and conversation with him as well. So stick around, and here he is. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everyone. The NYP crowd, Jessica, my colleague here, the team, and this is 2020. I just drained a beer that was much larger than the flight that you saw up here. Rocked out to a George Michael song that was popular when I was in high school, and now I'm presenting to a laptop. If that's not 2020, I don't know what is. But I appreciate you and taking some time today in this world of remote working when we've all had our fill of Zoom calls, and then you choose to take the time in the evening to dial in again. I appreciate that and look forward to having a discussion with you. I did have some thoughts about our company, Alps, but I want to make sure that my words tonight are super relevant to you. And so Alps, which is a Missoula-based company, has in fact weathered the pandemic so far successfully. And indeed, we do expect that when COVID is in our rearview mirror, Alps will emerge with more revenues, more profit, and employing more people than when we began. Not a lot on any of those categories, but directionally in the right direction. So, what I would attribute that to, first and foremost, is just luck. Right? Our business model has not been one that has been put to the test like so many of our community members, businesses here who have really struggled with the realities of COVID and all that is presented. So we have done some things and we've done some things well, but I just want to acknowledge first and foremost that the fact that we'll come out of the other end of this more successful than we went into it has a lot more to do with just the blind luck of the industry that we're in. But what I would like to talk a little bit about, thinking about you and the state that you're likely in your career, from what I've been told about the folks on this call and the demographics of this group, I'd like to talk a little bit about what you could be thinking about as you plan your today career and plan for your tomorrow job. And from Alps' perspective, we think a lot about this a lot, and we take a great deal of pride in the culture and the people that we have in our company. But I want this talk to be more about you and allow you to kind of think about what that means. And so really, when I think about how we conduct ourselves, to the extent that I offer you any words of wisdom that you think are relevant, let me just be the first to assure you that anything that I've gained over the years of my career, both here and in states other than here and abroad, when I lived and worked abroad, it has been disproportionately drawn from either watching and repeating those that are wise, or having really screwed something up myself and having been given both the grace and from somebody who has walked with me as I've done something not great, but also have taken the time to point it out to me, to offer observations to correct and then allow me to repair. And so to the extent you see any kind of words of wisdom or relevance, I want to make sure that you understand that is such an important part of the professional journey. So with that, I'll offer a couple thoughts and then open it up to questions. I know the pinnacle of this talk has already occurred with discussions about beer, but let me offer you a couple thoughts, and maybe this will be relevant to you. I just ask that you listen, and we'll see. I tend to think that most things break in the 80-20 rule. And in the 20% column, let's talk about career planning and career action in the kind of doing perspective, the work perspective. I think people mistakenly feel that the vast majority of what they're doing professionally is attributable to that, and they think that that's more like the 80 or 90%. It's actually about the 20%. And that's actually setting and accomplishing objectives, the work, the doing. And in that column, it is vitally important, and I just offer you one thought. There are lots of people who have written and podcasts that have thought about this and studied it and are far smarter than I am and far more credible to give you counsel on this. But let's talk about ideas for a second, because ideas are great, and I'm sure you have some great ideas, and I'm sure you've had some great ideas. And maybe you're thinking about some ideas that you have at the place that you work right now. And let me just offer you this. Ideas are great, but everybody has ideas. It's execution that differentiates the people who will advance and be entrusted with more authority and opportunity, and the people who have ideas but don't execute on those ideas will be left behind. And so I'd encourage you to kind of think about that topic in the context of the difference between having an idea and having an idea that when you present it in a way where you also offer to participate in making that idea a reality. And ideally, if you're qualified, or even if you're not yet qualified, and offer to lead that idea in the execution. Ideas versus execution there are certainly books and books written about that. And I just ask you to think about the difference between those two. Executors are who prevail in the end. Idea folks are great. Second, so that's 20%. In my mind, that's 20% of the work equation. 80% of the work equation and 80% of what ultimately in the end results in people being promoted or moving to different places of employment and having career advancement is the reality that our lives, yours and mine, at the office, at home, and in almost every aspect of our existence, is a giant experiment in behavioral science. And at the office, also behavioral economics. All of us, and what we say, and the words we speak, and how we act, and how we respond, we are all a product of our journey up until this point. We're a product of the words that have been spoken to us, some very hurtful, and some very triumphant. We're a product of the experiences that we've had. And I don't think that we, as a business community, focus enough on the reality of why people do what they do and why they behave the way they behave by trying to understand that people are a puzzle, and every experience that we've all had in our past, from our childhood up until now, is a piece of that puzzle. And we bring all of that baggage, good and bad, up until this point in time. And so I think the people who are most gifted in dealing with people, even if they don't really understand the people, are the people who are most thoughtful about the reality that we were all very emotionally driven beings, and we're a product of our existence up until this point. And so I've got a question for you, and I'd ask you to think about this in the context of your own life, and it's about politics. And I suspect that we are all so ready to never talk about politics again. Let me just, I happen to love politics, but let me just ask you a question about politics. You believe whatever you believe, and you might believe it strongly. So my question to you is, are you not only prepared, but do you enjoy engaging in a discussion with someone who believes just as strongly as you believe, but they believe the opposite of what you believe in politics? Can you honestly say that in that discussion, you seek to find some legitimacy in their point and their perspective, and you seek to find some deficit in your point, in your perspective? And you can make fun of yourself if it's appropriate, and the whole situation. And I think that's a reasonable litmus test, because we are in a supercharged, highly sensitized political environment. And more people seem utterly incapable of going to that topic and having that kind of discourse. And I have to suggest that if you and I were in the same place and I was observing you, if you were unable to engage in that type of discussion, to really learn from somebody who thinks very differently than you, not take your position as immovable, and inject a little humor, if you were incapable of that, it would be very difficult to entrust you with more authority over and more stewardship over people. Because, like it or not, in our country and oftentimes in our world, pretty much divided down the middle. And we've got people who feel very strongly with a great deal of legitimacy on both sides, one way or another. And so it's less about the ideology of the political question, and it's more about your willingness and ability to engage with others. If you are the type of person who is more likely to retweet or post a highly politicized perspective and vilify the other side, and not somebody who seeks to reach out and engage, that's not great. And those are not the ingredients that would make a great leader. On the other side of the coin, and people who aren't this way can become this way with a simple decision to become this way. If you recognize, whether it's politics or any of the other positions, that so divide us as a people, if you're prepared to look at somebody across the table as a credible person who has an interesting perspective that you might be able to learn from, and can come out of the other side of this conversation wanting to have a beer here at Cranky Sam's or anywhere else, that's a really important litmus test for your likelihood to succeed in business. That's my 2 cents. I think that politics is actually a relatively accurate litmus test on that. So that's kind of something for you to contemplate. And then let me just offer a couple bullet points of counsel that I've learned or that I've observed. And I would just, again, ask you to be introspective when you hear these things. Because I understand, based on my knowledge of your story and where you likely are in your age and career and where you live. And so hopefully some of these observations might be relevant to you. The first is, millennials get a bad rap, right? But, and there are, I think that there are some of the most interesting, most coveted qualities of the millennial generation, right? One of the aspects that is kind of often maligned is this kind of me sense. Everything is about me. And so I'd ask you, if you're thinking about your career and wanting to plan for the most successful career trajectory, ask yourself what your expectations are about how paternalistic your company is. The amazing speech that JFK gave many years ago, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. There's a lot of relevance to that in all aspects of our lives. And your employer is not there to serve you. You're there to serve in a virtuous circle with you and your employer around there. So you kind of think about that. And also, if you're thinking about your career trajectory and how you want to plan for your next step, be willing to take some risks. What I've observed, which is probably among the most alarming characteristics of the younger generation, is risk aversion. Right? One of the most important moves that I believe, with what little I know about you, one of the most important moves that you can make to manage your career is your willingness to take bold risks. There's a lot I believe, and among the top is that the greatest you and the greatest that you can become just on the other side of the horizon from whatever fear you have. And whatever fear you have is probably a product of the life that you've lived up until this point. And I just encourage you to spend some time thinking about what that fear is to you. And I can almost promise that your greatest potential is just on the other side of that. But you've got to move. You've got to push into it. You've got to have some faith and trust that even when things don't go as planned, which they almost never do go as planned, it will work out. And so just be bold in what you do. Be communal in how you act, and be inclusive in how you behave. And I do think that you're going to have an awesome career trajectory. So those are just some thoughts. I have no idea where I'm at on the timing, but I'd love to take a question or two, if that's appropriate.
Oh, yes.
I think I might be getting the hook from Nicole anyway.
So I'm Jessica. I'm one of your co-chairs for this year's Missoula Young Professional season, and I also have the pleasure of working with David. He is my boss's boss, I think, but you wouldn't know that, and I think that's one of the things I most admire about him is that our offices are kind of facing one another, and he does have a glass office, so it's central, and it's truly open door policy. I kind of bothered him earlier today, actually, about something. So some of the questions that we had, though, I mean, obviously, we're always everyone's boss's boss. So you kind of mentioned characteristics that are really important, being bold, being inclusive, and being communal. But what are some of the steps that you've had to take to advance in your career and in your personal life? Kind of maybe what are those sacrifices to kind of get to where you are now?
That's great. Thank you, Jessica. And it's kind of a cliche to work harder than everyone else, but that I mean, there really is no way to advance, I think, consistently unless you're willing to put the sweat into it. So that's kind of a given. I understand that you had a talk last time about networking, and I am a disciple of networking. In fact, I would attribute the most pivotal moments when I was given opportunities way before I was ready, way before I had the experience or legitimacy to be given those opportunities, and that was a function of networking. And so I didn't hear the talk that you had last time, but I trust it was good. I heard it was good, and I would think about managing your career intentionally, being unapologetic about mapping out where you want to go, asking the people who can play a role in helping you get there. It might be your immediate boss, it might be other people in your company who have knowledge that you can gain, that can give you a diversity of experience. It just, again, it comes back to that, you gotta move. You gotta move on the other side of move on the other side of your fear, and you've got to be bold enough to take some risks and prepared that not everything is going to turn out the way that you think. But once you start to develop the the scars from those processes, you'll find it's very enriching. And so I would encourage you to be very intentional about your networking. And business is relationships, every much as so that your personal life side is also relationship driven. People who are familiar with you and who gain trust in you will then feel comfortable putting you up for something, some opportunities, some transfers, something, based on the knowledge that they've gained through their interactions with you. That can happen just by accident, but the people who tend to chart a course faster are the ones who were far more intentional doing it.
Appreciate that. Your work ethic definitely can subscribe to that. One of the questions we had in the audience was the biggest fear you overcame in your career and how you did that.
That's a good question. So let me answer that question with a confession. So I think one of my areas of most significant weakness happens to also be one of the most important managerial qualities, right? I tend to, for reasons which I can't possibly explain, and it's probably buried somewhere in my deep subconscious, I tend to not give affirmation and compliments as much as I should. And that is one of the key ingredients to provide motivation to the people who are laboring with you and on your behalf. And so that's kind of an area of psychology that I struggle with the most. And I'm sure there are profound reasons why that happens to be one of my Achilles heels. But that's not a struggle that I've overcome. It would probably be easier to give you some example of that. That's a struggle that I still wrestle with, and that I'm definitely not where I want to be or need to be in that category.
Very humble. I appreciate that. We had a really good question. What does the intentionality of relationships look like to you?
So that's a great question, because intentionality of relationships is a function of what your objective is. And some people call that politicking or internal office politics. I think that pejorative term is unfair, because I think internal politicking is the way that it is described in that kind of Machiavellian perspective, is if you're not transparent about what you're after. If you're very open about, look, this is what I aspire to be, I'm entirely prepared to hear feedback about where I need growth to get there. I'm going to kind of expose myself in candor about what I know and what I don't know and what I'm prepared to hear. But you'd be surprised if you ask somebody directly to help you with something, you'll be surprised at how likely it is that they'll say yes. And you'll be surprised at how unlikely it would have been to occur in the absence of a direct ask. So I would encourage you to think about where you want to go from where you are today. Who can play a role in that journey? and then be very transparent with them. And it might not work out 100% of the time with 100% of the people. That's part of the process. But be very open with them about where you want to go. And I think you'll be really surprised. The world, and this community in particular, is full of really good people who really want the best for other people as well. And I think you'll be surprised at how excited you will be when you hear other people help you map your own journey.
Great. We're learning a lot tonight. I love it. One of the other questions, what are some of the biggest risks you've taken in your career? And what is an example of when you took a risk that failed? We have that in quotations, failed. And how did you adapt and learn from that?
Sure. So biggest risks would be going where the next step is very uncertain. When my wife and I had been married 4 or 5 years, we were living in Florida. I was working for a big multinational public insurance company. After 9/11, there was an opportunity to move abroad. There's a lot of uncertainty about that, and it required giving up a lot of my comfort zone. I had worked really hard to establish kind of this circle that I was in, but I just felt, for me, and my faith and following, I tend to lean in that direction, listen for the word and the whisper, and I felt like that was where the call was sending me, but it was not easy because it was very unknown, and I was going to have to let go of the known and the safe. And we've done that a couple times in our journey, and it's funny because it does become easier when you start to do it more. So that would be what would be among the most difficult. The failures, there are many, right? I love to dabble in entrepreneurial endeavors, and there have been some pretty spectacular failures, financial and otherwise. I remember when I was first starting out in a career, it was when employment practices and labor law was first coming into the workplace, and we had started a company, and I can't even imagine the number of hours that I spent, and at my request had recruited many others to spend. That did not turn out well. My personal email address that I've kept since the early 90s is still the name of that company, because it just always reminds me that I made some spectacularly poor decisions that were unnecessary, but it creates who you are, and it doesn't define you. The getting up, dusting yourself off, and moving to the next adventure is what should define you. But I do keep that email address, my Yahoo email address.
I think a lot of our young professionals can relate to that right now with COVID. I think a lot of us are having to make a lot of risks in our careers and maybe in some of our dreams as well. And I think what you said, that adaptability and that boldness should serve us well. And one example, I think I feel comfortable enough to speak on behalf of the young professionals that we really appreciate you speaking and kind of giving a face to that failure, but turning into this ultimate success and this growth. We had a couple more questions that kind of a two-part. Your favorite books that you recommend, maybe for entrepreneurial spirit or leadership development, and then also favorite podcast that you would recommend to anybody who's looking to advance in their career or just advance as a human being.
Okay, podcast is easy. No Stupid Questions, which is a podcast between Angela Duckworth, who wrote Grit. She's a UPenn social psychologist, ostensibly probably one of the top in the country. And then Stephen Dubner, who wrote Freakonomics. They have a podcast. The Freakonomics podcast and the No Stupid Questions podcast are two podcasts that I consume within hours of when they come out. That's when I run at lunch, that's generally what I'm listening to. Neither of those people share my worldview necessarily, but and they talk about politics on occasion, and they view the world through a different political lens than I do. But I so respect their commitment to intellectual honesty and the way that they poke at issues from perspectives that are different than their baseline assumptions. So No Stupid Questions is a fantastic lesson. The books, Malcolm Gladwell has been kind of one of my most kind of recurring go-to. Outliers is probably one of my favorites. the business self-help books, I can't say that I'm a huge fan of those, particularly in today's podcast era. I feel like, the Entree Leadership podcast, you can really get kind of an abridged version of a lot of these books that probably could be 75 pages, but the publisher's requiring it to be 300 pages. And so I tend to feel that there are a couple books from Brian Tome that I would highly recommend to UMB, and Malcolm Gladwell's books. If you haven't read Outliers or Blink or Tipping Point, because what Gladwell does, another person who does not share my perspective of much of the world, but who's just so crazy smart, his approach is kind of defying our conventional wisdom and using data to do that. And I think that's super interesting. He's an interesting person.
I love it. It looks like we've got a lot of people who can really relate to that. We got some shout outs to Angela Duckworth and Malcolm Gladwell as favorites in our group. Last thoughts that you want to share with our young professionals, last words of wisdom, advice, anything you want to leave us with tonight before I hand it back over to Ian.
Great. Thank you. Well, I just appreciate all right, we're back. Okay. A little malfunction there. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me kind of drone on about some thoughts. I hope that some of what I've said might be relevant to you, and perhaps upon reflection as you marinate on some of these themes and then make them your own. And maybe it's just a small seed that then you take into a different place. I hope it can be helpful. My last kind of bit of parting advice, and I believe this with all my heart: you are what you think. You are what you think, and you are what your brain consumes. And so, in this crazy world where I believe that media, mainstream media, and social media is the greatest threat to our nation's mental health that's out there, I hope that you are not consuming that content and allowing it to frame your state of mind. Because there's a lot of really crazy, troubling things going out there. But you know what? There is 100,000 times more awesome, amazing advancements in technology and humanity and other things. And I'd encourage you to look at the world through a positive, optimistic outlook. And if you do that, I promise you that your world will become more positive and optimistic as a result. There's a lot of social science that is backing that up. I think it is becoming almost a truism within that profession. And I hope that for you. I hope as we wrap up 2020 and begin 2021, that you see hope and optimism for your life and your career and the people who form your circle. You are, by the way, as another tidbit, they say the average of the 5 people who you spend the most time with. So as you think about 2021, perhaps give some thought to the folks who you're spending the most time with, because there are a lot of studies that back up that position as well. So I wish the best for you. I appreciate you giving me a few minutes. And thank you again to this group for giving me the time in the audience. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. Thank you.
I wish there was a crowd of 80 people here clapping as loud as they could, because David did such a great job. That was awesome. I mean, I learned a lot from that. I mean, it's just great hearing, another perspective from someone that's been in the business and has been successful in Missoula especially, and just showing that, it can be done, and it can be done for anybody. I mean, you put your mind to it, like he said, executing on ideas, that's so great. Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to give a big shout out to Cranky Sam Public House for having us out, for letting us taste their beers. They're great beers. They're great. You guys need to come down and try them. I also want to shout out Liquid Planet and Cranky Sam's. They sponsored this event. And also, don't forget to tag us in your pictures to get the Pangea $50 gift card. And I think that's, and follow us, please. Yeah, follow us, Facebook, Instagram. I think we have a LinkedIn page, too. If you guys want to connect with us, that would be great. So yeah, thank you guys so much for attending. We're really happy. Hopefully our next 3rd event will be out soon. Again, I'd like to thank Timmy and Dave for coming on and speaking with us. So have a great night. We'll see you next time. Cheers.